Hello, everyone. We are live with People and Purpose podcast, the space where we explore how leaders from across the world drive meaningful change within the communities and societies around them, and also build human centered organizations that thrive and create positive impact. I'm your host, Tarja Takko, and today we are diving deep into intercultural leadership and why the ability to connect across cultures is a strategic superpower for modern leaders. My guest today is David Rigby, an intercultural leadership expert, mentor, and a coach. David is also a motivational speaker, trainer, and the founding director of Smart Coaching and Training. Davis has worked in 22 countries, built teams across 4 continents, and he has spent decades helping leaders navigate cultural differences within empathy and impact. David has also hosted a radio show in UK, and he has written 40 articles for Al Arabiya News. He has a mathematics degree from London University, and his career has evolved from IT to focusing on people. And David is also a singer, so quite a multi-talented person joining us today. David, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Tarja.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I would like to start by understanding a bit your journey. You have had such a global journey. You worked across Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and with teams that span so many different cultures. Can you take us back to the beginning? What sparked your interest in this intercultural leadership?
Well, interculturality, I guess. When I was at school, there was one guy who was from India. There's only one, and that was it. And he was my friend. When I went to university, I spent most of my time with people from Cyprus. I learned Italian in my 20s and Spanish a bit later on. And I was always interested in the culture. I was always interested in eating the food, where they came from, the background. So, whilst I don't know too much about the UK, I know a lot about everywhere else. That's what it comes to. So, I always, from the beginning of life, I was interested in other cultures, other people.
Mm, mm. How do you define intercultural leadership, and also trying to understand what makes it different from just being a good leader? So, what really is the intercultural part that an excellent leader needs to understand?
Well, basically, if you're leading people only in one country, you will tend to operate in the culture of that country. For example, if you're working in Northern Europe, people expect to have a lot of autonomy and make their own decisions. Whereas if you're working in, particularly in the Far East, the leader makes all the decisions. And what you have to do as a follower is do what you're told. So it's a completely opposite way of living. And interculturality means you have to deal with both of those at the same time, even though they're totally conflicting.
Mm, mm. What is your, and you worked in so many different countries and with so many different cultures, that in your experience, what are the most common blind spots leaders face when they are trying to build connections across different cultures?
I think it's expecting people all to behave the same way, and they just don't.
Yeah. Can you share, I don't know if you have some concrete example that you could share.
The classic classroom example
Mm.
is the one about L'Oreal working with the French, which they claim to be, and their Chinese counterparts. And the French, as you possibly know, are very good at intuitive conversations. You're supposed to know what the end of the sentence is without them actually saying it. That's the French approach to life. Uh,
Mm.
and the Chinese like to work as a group. So if you want to ask a question of like one of the junior members in a team, you can't fundamentally. You have to ask the leader in that team the question, who then asks the junior person. That isn't the way it works in France. I mean, I've been to several meetings in Paris, and I have never understood what the conclusion is to any of them.
Mm. How do you see, David, now that the world is evolving and people are connecting across different countries, and I think this interculturality is becoming, I would say, more open. Do you see that the young people across and in different countries are also changing? So maybe the Chinese are starting to also behave a bit differently than they used to in terms of leadership, as an example.
No, I think they know they ought to,
Mm.
but they don't.
So the change is slow.
So the change is very slow.
Mm.
If you ask, I mean, one of the key challenges is working with anyone in the Far East is never ask a question where the answer can be yes, because they'll always answer yes to everything. So really, so they have to say something totally different from yes, and that's not necessarily no.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you use this behavioral preference profile and also these cognitive diversity tools. Uh, how do these help in creating bridges and positive understanding rather than putting people in boxes? Because even you are from Finland or Sweden or any other country, you still find a lot of diversity within the people on top of how they are from the cultural point of view.
Well, if you look at cognitive diversity, which is the color profiling and everything else, we've used for 15 years, basically there's a line between logical and emotional, and there's another line between introvert and extrovert. And most people there are all combinations of all of them, but they will have the preferences. So some people, I'm using the color profiling colors. The reds are the ones which are very logical and they're very direct, and they don't like detail. If you work with blues, they are again very logical, but they like process and procedure, and they like to follow all the rules. The emotional ones, the greens, will tend to be more introvert, so they're more concerned about everyone's welfare. And the yellows like to have a party, so they're the ones who are very good at selling and making relationships and everything else. They're also very bad at finishing anything. Now, everyone's all of everything, but they're all one of each. Now, it doesn't matter which country you're in, you've still got an even distribution across those four. And so just because someone comes from, let's say, Finland, for example, it doesn't mean to say they're necessarily all blue. You've got all the combinations of all of them, even in Finland. So you're dealing with individuals, you're not dealing with the culture. People have learned the culture, but they are individuals.
So it's understanding the context, but then it's important to really understand, as you said, everybody are different and you're dealing with individuals.
And it's how and the skill in there is understanding, looking for all the clues about how people will behave. And then you learn to communicate so they receive the messages in the way they like to receive them.
Yeah.
So if you're talking to someone who's red, you don't go saying, "How are you today?" No. It doesn't work. It's straight in with, "Can you tell me what this is now?" End of topic.
Yeah. Hey, you, and I have talked with you about creating a connection and the importance of connection, especially when you are working remotely and in hybrid teams when you don't get to spend so much time face to face. But in global multicultural context, how can leaders create that true sense of belonging and connection when you're not meeting your people face to face?
I think you have to have the intention, and people have to know you're being sincere about what you're doing. Ticking all the boxes doesn't work. You have to be who you are. So equally, if you understand, let's say that the personality of your your fellow people you're working with, they also have to understand you. So it's learning how to communicate on an individual basis that makes the difference, and being aware of the cultural background. Most of the people I work with, most of my colleagues, have lived in more than one country, so they're very used to intercultural things, and still we get it wrong, and we still get the communications wrong.
And by you saying that, would you like to evolve a little bit? We still get the communication wrong. What could we do to get it better?
I think you don't make assumptions. The number of times I've expected someone to know something and realised that they haven't, or it's obvious to me and it's not obvious to them. So in some ways, you're treating them like a child, but don't behave like you treat them like a child. But it's also ensuring, like, only leaving the house, did you turn the gas off? Did you turn the water off? All the sorts of things. They may not do it, and you've made that assumption that they have.
In your view, I'm a big fan of talking about the importance of communication and also developing communication. I think it's so important, especially in these global organizations that are operating in many different countries. But how would you define successful communication? What really needs to be taken into account?
I think successful communication is when both people understand the same thing, and they could be working from different viewpoints. And the purpose of communication is usually to get something done. And if you actually manage to do it, then you've communicated okay.
Yeah, and maybe it's also very frequent communication that you're keeping it active all the time. Otherwise,
I keep in touch with people forever. I went on holiday in August to Amsterdam, and I stayed with someone I went to school with, and I haven't seen them since I went to school. But the connection's still there, and I do that all around the world. I keep up with people. I make sure I do. I personally, with my business, I send newsletters, and that's to 2,000 people. And I can't remember who they all are, but nevertheless, they're there. And if I go to a particular country, then I look up who I know there and decide who I want to get in touch with. And it can't be all of them.
yeah, but that's excellent how you say that I keep connections forever, and that sort of sounds that you are very good in creating connections again across the different countries and globally.
Last year we were asked to run a program on project management, which we don't normally do, even though I'm qualified in the British government's Prince 2. And I telephoned the guy who trained me in 1995. And I phoned him and said, have you got any training material? And there he was in Portugal growing cork for wine bottles. But I knew that. So I could immediately talk about what he's doing now before we go on to asking the favours. But that takes a lot of work. But I know that, and it's in my notebook. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's very positive. How I say it.
And other things is like you say, well, how's your wife now? And he says, well, she's dead. I mean, you don't want that to happen.
Yeah, but you cannot maybe keep up with
No, you
everything
can't.
with such a large.
So you can be diplomatic, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
knowing more than the business side. One of my associates, Peggy, she's Hong Kong Chinese and lives in Dubai, and she specializes in tourism. So when I was in Manchester last year, I phoned her up and said, can we have some recommendations on Chinese restaurants, please? and I got the list within 3 minutes. Now, if I didn't know that about her, I wouldn't have done it.
Mm.
Knowing all those personal bits and pieces makes all the difference.
Mm. Yeah, so invest your time in knowing the people that you're working with,
Yeah, not
knowing the
what they
network.
do,
Mm.
but
Yeah,
what who they are. Very, very important.
yeah, yeah, definitely. What is one leadership habit that you have developed that you think only came from working across all these different cultures?
Listen first.
Mm.
Always listen.
Mm.
Listen to what they're saying. Listen to the tone. See what's implied. Because in different cultures, they will not tell you things, and you've got to work it out for yourself what they're actually telling you. So always listen and don't come to conclusions, and really confirm what you think they've said. Do you mean this? Try paraphrase it. Don't repeat it.
Mm.
Paraphrase it in your terms
Mm.
and check it. So just be very, very careful on
Mm.
cross-checking comprehension.
Mm.
It's even the same with Brits working with Americans who, in theory, have the same language.
In
And
theory.
as you know, if an American says that's quite nice, it means it's great. If a Brit says that's quite nice, it means, well, it's a bit less than nice, really, but it's okay. Fundamentally different, same words,
Mm.
and that's in the same language. So working with different languages. And if you ask an Australian what quite nice is, I have no idea. It could be either of those.
That sounds very, I mean, it sounds very difficult that you need to understand that the words can mean so many different things. How would you guide a leader that is starting to work in this very global environment and trying to learn all these different meanings?
Well, I mean, first of all, understanding language is very important.
Mm.
And certainly the theory is that whichever language you think in affects the way you actually operate. And certainly the way people academically operate is very different. In the north of Europe and in America, people say this is the conclusion, and then they'll justify it. And part of the reason for that is most people haven't got the concentration to get to the justification. Whereas if you're working in Southern Europe, you start with all the assumptions and you eventually come to a conclusion. That's a completely different way of operating. And yet they have to work in line with each other. So you can start your meeting with, which way are we doing this? These are two ways of doing it. Which one do you want to do? And then you decide, and then off you go. If you
Yeah,
don't know that in the first place,
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
find in the Spanish thing, why has he said this? He can't even justify it. He hasn't said anything yet. And we start off with the answer. And it's called the inverted triangle. You start with the answer.
Mm.
And I had some good conversations in Spain about that.
Yeah. But for this new leader who is stepping into this multicultural team, any practical steps that you would share they should do in their first, I don't know, 30 days or
It
100 days to
depends. It
build that
depends
trust?
who they are and where they're starting from.
Mm.
If you're working on a top-down leadership model, you have to remember that it doesn't work in most places, but you may have been taught to do it. So there's a conundrum between demonstrating you know all the answers to the Far East and the Middle East and demonstrating you don't know all the answers
Mm.
so it's the two things. And you can actually say that. Say, I believe this and be honest about it. And this is what I'm trying to do. And it's that compromise between the two.
Yeah, so it's being your authentic self.
Your authentic self.
Mm.
And being open to other ways of doing things. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the things that while I have been in the three areas you said, I've also worked in Africa and I've worked in the States. So, and again, it's different approaches. And one of the challenges you get with working in interculturality
Mm.
in Northern Europe is it's Northern Europe. And all the theories are from the global north.
Mm.
And we have the global south, which is the rest of the world. And they do things differently.
Mm.
And just because it's differently doesn't mean it's wrong. It's
Mm.
things to learn from. And
Mm.
that's what you have to work with. I mean, I have contacts in Nigeria who I speak to every so often to get clarity.
Mm.
And that's one of the reasons I have all these people is I can ring them up and say, well, in your country, or because you're old or because you're young,
Mm.
I have lots of because you're young because I need to have that these days. What do you think about this? So it's not making any assumptions, but
Mm.
still being courageous enough not to be scared. That's about saying anything either. So it's that combination of the two opposites you have to work with.
Mm. Yeah. One interesting thing you've said also is now going to recruiting the best talent for the organization to drive the results. You've said that you need to really focus on recruiting for the team rather than just finding the best individuals. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
McKinsey, you've heard of them.
Mhm.
They have written endless papers about the essentialness of having a diverse team.
Mm.
So, a priority above everything else is having a diverse team. Now, if, for example, you've got a team from 5 different countries, but again, back to cognitive diversity, if they're all reds and they're all argumentative and direct, you will not get the best results. You get results very
Mm.
fast because they're
Mm.
all red, but they're the wrong ones.
Mm.
So you want to look at a team and understand what the colours might be and decide, well, in reality, whilst for this job, we want someone who might be blue, that's the more logical and follow all the rules. Perhaps we want someone who's green, who's got much more emotional things to balance up the team. So focusing on the team is
Mm.
more important than balancing the uh, getting the right job for the individual. And it applies not only to the way people think, it applies to race and sex and sexuality and age.
Mm.
And it's all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, and this is a good bridge to also now focus a bit on this diversity and inclusion, which is not a new conversation, but the challenges are still very present. And from your global perspective, what are the continuing or emerging challenges in the diversity and inclusion space you see today?
Well, one of the problems has been the law,
Mm.
insofar as HR departments follow the tick box approach in order to make sure they're legal. So they're very good at doing diversity and they're really terrible at doing inclusion
In general.
in general.
Mm.
So what needs to be ramped up is the inclusion. And
Mm.
it's the inclusion on all those different topics. It's
Mm.
not just the 5 things always everyone talks about. It's including people from different backgrounds, different classes,
Mm.
different educational aspirations. This is how you get your properly successful, diverse team. I mean, one of the arguments we talk about code switching, which is when you talk like this when you're at home, and then you go to work and you talk like this. You know, it's hard work to do that,
Mm.
and it's not in England, in London. It's not just those who've come from across the water, as it were.
Mm.
It's all those also those who've come from the north of England. They have to learn to change their accents and eat different foods and all the rest of it in order to fit in. I think
Mm.
as I come from the north of England, I've learned to do it. But nevertheless, it's a challenge for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it really, and I being the chief HR officer, driving diversity and inclusion. And I think it's something you really need to care and put your heart into, not to just tick the box, but really drive the inclusion in the organization. But how do you, I mean, what is your guidance for the ones that are just ticking the box, but rather really needs to move towards inclusion and belonging? That how do they make people feel valued and heard? What are some concrete, I don't know,
I think
guidance?
one of the points is that it's getting the enthusiasm for doing your job.
Mm,
And if you get praise for doing inclusion rather than ticking the boxes, then you might be motivated to do it. But if your boss tells you, oh, just tick all these boxes and this diversity stuff is something we have to do, but we try and avoid it.
mm,
I had a conversation with a friend I've known for a long, long time who's a Filipino woman who lives in Dubai. I've known her a long 10 years. And she was recently recruiting, and she posted on, I think it was on Facebook, they wanted a Pinoy. Now, Pinoy is someone who's Filipino, and a woman for a particular job. And I said, well, can you actually say that legally? This is Dubai. And the answer was a bit vague. And she says, well, the entire workforce is Pinoy and female. And I said, well, okay, then that's what you've chosen to do, but ultimately you won't get the best results.
mm.
And there we left it, because we could spend for hours arguing about this.
Yeah. And I think it's the genuine interest, it's your passion and something you really feel that you want to be driving. But would you also see the purpose is also showing up in this context of psychological safety, generational differences, and diversity and inclusion?
Can you repeat the question in a different way?
Yeah, I'm trying to. This is people on purpose. We're talking about purpose-led leaders. So how
Yeah.
would you put the purpose in this context of creating
Okay.
psychological safety and the importance of
If you
diversity?
are the leader whose job is to make profit this year, then
Mm,
you forget living with purpose, working with purpose.
mm,
If you wish to continue doing it in 10 years, then that's what you have to do. So, I mean, I'm reading, well, this book at the moment, which is Servant Leadership with Frans Trompenaar, so I whoops, that way around, who I recently met in Holland because I chose to. It's to do with, if you don't want to do all the job all by yourself, then you can be a leader in the traditional way.
mm.
If you want to be in business, you continue to grow the people you are with. Try and recruit people who are better than you, which I'm extremely good at because most people are better than me, so it's easy. And and certainly build your team for the future.
Mm,
And that means enabling the young people to learn from the old ones.
mm,
I have one of my associates is 25, and we have amazing rows. But he learns from me as well as I learn from him, and that's all around the DEI model.
mm,
And use of pronouns, which drives me insane, but that's generational stuff.
mm.
My name is X, my pronouns are Y. I mean, and immediately anyone over the age of 50 goes bonkers. So
Many might, yes.
like stop the conversation there. But I understand why it's there, but it doesn't mean to have to follow it.
Mm, yeah, yeah. But can you share a story where a purpose-driven initiative either succeeded or failed because of how it was communicated across different cultures?
I think Do you know what the balanced scorecard is, which is a
Yeah,
way of
yeah.
measuring a strategy?
Mm,
If you don't, if you spend too long developing for the future, you can go out of business whilst you're doing it.
mm,
So you've still got to make sure you have your income coming in now in order to plan for the future. So it is that balance between the two, and certainly in the Franz Trompenaar's book, where they talk about the cultures in Africa where the people know their clients and spend a lot of time building those relationships up before they sell anything, which is good approach for the long term. If you're in America, it doesn't work. You want to sell things in the next 5 minutes, and you don't care who you sell it to.
mm.
But on the other hand, if you want to do business in the Middle East, unless you spend that time building those relationships, you'll never get the business.
Mm.
So it's the balance. It's understanding these are the pros and cons of doing it both different ways.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, I think it's the sustainable leadership anyway. As you said, you really have to ensure that you get your profits and you get your results short term, but you need to be also building the company, taking actions and decisions that create the company that is lasting for longer term,
I
which is
mean,
not very easy for many leaders.
you try implementing a strategy and getting support from accountants. You never get it. They have to be told.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, what is one question you believe every leader should ask themselves this year, putting it to this really difficult time to grow their intercultural leadership maturity, to become better leaders in a global
I think
context?
it's, am I humble enough to learn things?
Mm,
You have to know that you don't know it all, and to be continuously learning and recruiting people you can learn from, but also um, accepting that you do have things to offer. So it's not just I'm too shy and I can't say anything. It's being confident about what you do know, but recognizing you're humble enough not to know all of it. So it's that
mm,
combination.
mm, mm. And having also the courage, which I think you also mentioned, and you have been talking about the courage to do different things, even not knowing if you have all the needed talents. I remember you talked about you starting the singing.
Oh
So
yeah.
stepping into different new things without fully mastering the
Oh,
skill.
I had a good session this week on Monday. I went to an event and it was 5 hours in Spanish, and my Spanish isn't great. So if I'm in these events, I can get a lot of the words, but I can't understand the detail.
Mm.
And in the middle of this, they had a break, and they had tea and coffee and sandwiches and various things. And they're all speaking in Spanish, and I'm looking at thinking, don't be so stupid, David. Just go in there, talk to somebody. And I did. But I had to tell myself off for standing there looking at it, thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. And then off I went, and I was okay.
Mm.
But my Spanish I was really nervous about the Spanish when I was talking to these people, because I couldn't have a conversation about what they just talked about because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was that balance between having a conversation at all. And I got to know 4 or 5 people, and they're all university professors. And I think, just get on with it and do it.
Just
And,
get on with it and
and
do it. Yeah.
and next time it won't be so bad, which is always
Mm.
stepping out of your comfort zone, which I do
Mm.
all the time.
Yeah. Which is where you do all your learning.
Absolutely.
Mm. Hey, David, before we let you go, we always end with, well, quite often we end with a few quick fire questions. So just say whatever comes to your mind first. So let's start. And the first question is, what's a book that changed how you think about leadership?
Oh, this is it. One I have handy, The Culture Map by Erin Mayer.
Well, that was easy.
That was easy, and I'll
Mm.
tell you why I read this one. I was talking to some. I was given this a long time ago, and I was talking to one of my colleagues about exactly what was in this. And she showed the book. I thought, oh, I better read this before I go to the next presentation I'm doing. So I
Mm.
did.
So you did. Excellent. Hey, what is a culture that you have worked in that surprised or challenged you the most?
Um, American
Did it surprise or challenge?
challenged me, no end.
Okay,
You want
good.
to know why?
Yeah, I want to know why.
Okay, I think you hear certainly in the UK how the Americans are great at this and the all wonderful things they can do.
Hmm.
Every time I watch in America, there is a reluctance of old participants to take responsibility and make decisions. So you have endless presenteeism, be there forever, and no one decides anything. And I escaped from one and had all this hours and hours and hours of doing nothing, and went to a project in Denmark. Denmark, start 9:30, start what you're going to do, get on with it, and 4 o'clock you go home, and not a single deadline missed. Completely different approach.
Yeah, and I think that's the Denmark sounds like Finland. Quite a lot the same. Hey, what is one leadership value you think is underrated?
Integrity.
Hmm, that's a good answer. What is the best advice you ever got about connecting with people?
Um, Assume they know more than you do,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you can learn from them.
And learn from them. Yeah. If you were not doing what you do today, what would you be doing?
On the beach, where I ought to be, on the beach, but no.
How often are you on the beach?
Um, well, my house is by the sea, then
Yeah,
in
so
South
very
East
often.
Spain.
Yeah.
So I'll often go to the beach. I find even in the summer the sea's too cold, and in Mediterranean sea it's too cold to go in for me. So the sea not very often, but take some good books, listen to some good music. I record lots of radio programs. I listen to those on the beach.
Okay.
I listen to the radio all the time. Talk radio, this is.
Mm.
And again, I learn stuff from that. And I
Mm.
got good controversial programs, and you get new
Indeed.
ideas.
Mm. Mm.
So
Sounds.
it's still continuously learning. I don't read a lot, don't watch TV, but I listen to a lot of things. I listened to a program this week about a 1950s cricket commentator, and it just came on by accident. He just turned up, and it
Mm.
was all about South African politics.
Mm.
I wasn't expecting it. Utterly fascinating.
Mm.
So now I know more about the 1950s and South African politics, and things like that turn up all the time because you're just not expecting it. The
Yeah.
stuff.
Be open to learn. Yes. What is one thing you wish more leaders understood about interculturality?
Do you have to do it?
You have to do it.
Yeah, people don't even think about interculturality until it hits them.
Mm. Yeah.
My way is the only way, is the wrong way.
Fully agree. Hey, one last question. Coffee, tea, or something stronger after a long day of global workshops, maybe going to the beach?
Well, this is Spain, and if you're in Spain, you have lunch. And lunch lasts for 2 to 3 hours in the middle of the day. And it comes with possibly an aperitif and certainly 2 or 3 glasses of wine and a coffee. And then you go back to work.
Wow.
But I start the day with tea. So 2 or 3 cups of tea. Here we are. Evidence. and then I move on to coffee.
So it sounds that you're taking a little bit of everything.
All of them, yes. I mean, for me, decaffeinated coffee, no way. Alcohol-free beer, no way. It defeats its
The
purpose.
real stuff
The real stuff all the time. And
all the time.
and one of the great challenges of being in Spain is understanding menus.
Yeah.
And certainly, they've all got names. So it's not just learning the language; it's learning the names.
Definitely.
And they eat every bit of the animal.
Maybe that's something for all of us to learn when we next go to Spain. Hey, brilliant, David. Thank you so much.
It's been a
I
pleasure.
love the answers and I love the insights that you have been sharing here in the podcast. So thank you so much for joining and sharing your
Well,
stories and
thank you
insights.
for inviting me. I mean, great.
Thank you. And thank you for all the listeners. Until next time. Thank you.